Okay, welcome class. Yat eight anotwa Shea Charlotte Lacey and Shea Twoton in Shlon Kilfachini Bashichin Sinajine Itashi Che Hashlishne Itashinada Kut out a son and Shla. Ado it's Ayasanasha, then a yatli at Twodan, do Yatni Jane dan. Shema a yatli at Twodan. Naga Shisha a Yatni Jane dan Naga. Kut out Aden Shiaho a. So hello class, my name is Charlotta Lacey. I will be teaching about the chapter houses today for our lesson, and I am filling in for my brother Clayton Long. I am of the Big Water people, born into the Red House people. My maternal grandparents are the Black Streakwood people, and my paternal grandparents are the Mud people, and that is who I am. I am originally from Clagato, Arizona. It's by Ganado, Arizona. That's where my mother's family is from. And my father, his side of the family, they are from Torreon, New Mexico, by Cuba, New Mexico. And so those are my roots. And let me go ahead and start off just introducing the topic. Today we are going to be talking about the Navajo Nation chapter houses. And this is an overview by Google and myself. I've used some information from Google. And I wanted to start off by saying that the Navajo Nation is pretty much the way that the government is organized is very similar to our national federal government as well as our state government. And so within the Navajo Nation, we have the three executive branches. We have the executive office, which is the office of the president and the vice president. And then we have the legislative body, which is our council delegates that represent each of these chapter houses that we will be talking about today. And then the other body is the judicial branch, which is our police, as well as like our judicial system is through the judicial branch. So we have three branches of government, just like our federal government has. And then as far as like chapter houses, like how does that all fall into like the Navajo Nation? Like where does it fit? Well, it's a form of government, okay? So just like we have in each town, for some of you guys, you're going to school in Richville. I'm not sure what other schools Clayton is teaching through this social classroom. I think up in Salt Lake, like each town has a local government, and that is the local offices, like where the mayor is presiding over the city or the town, and he has a group of usually members of that, what is it called? The city office, the city council. He has those councils that help him make decisions on behalf of the town or the city that he represents. So in the same way, we have chapter houses established on the Navajo Nation where we have representatives that are over the chapter houses that represent each that small community on the Navajo Nation. So having prefaced that, let me go ahead and start to the, so I'm going to start on my first. Hi Eileen, it's Charlotta. I am teaching for Clayton today. So so let's go to the first slide. I'm going to ask all of you guys, how many chapter houses exist on the Navajo Nation? I can have people guess. So if you want to give me your response, that would be great. How many chapter houses do you think exist on the Navajo Nation? Okay, I'm going to look in chat and see what people are saying. Okay, 100. Okay, 108, 110. Oh, yeah, it's Eileen. 108, 150, 200, 120. These are all great guesses. The next slide will tell you how many chapters exist on the Navajo Nation. Did you know that we have 110 chapter houses all over the Navajo Nation? And each town on the Navajo Nation is represented by our council delegates. So let's go ahead and move to the next page. One thing that I wanted to bring out before we talk about chapter houses in depth is that before we had chapter houses, I'm talking like back in the early 1817, 1900s, our government, our people would come together, and everyone was like in group by clans, and so they would always select one person to represent the group. And this person that they selected was an orator. And an orator is someone who speaks very well, like they can have bullet points in their mind and be able to address each topic without having to like have notes in front of them. They know exactly what the needs of their communities are. And so these leaders would go and meet with other leaders from other places. And some things that they would discuss are like farming. They would discuss like, raids or wars that were happening between their people. Like if it was, so they would discuss like even harvesting and other issues that would arise from their group of people that they needed to communicate to other communities. And so it is said, like, and when I've researched the natural communities, the leader, the government, the form of government back in those times was called the Nachit. And in Navajo, that means one who uses their hands to accomplish things. And basically these leaders, these Natsanis, they would be the ones that the people would look up to. And the way that the people would vote for them is they would say what they needed to say. And then the member of that community would then either stand in front or stand behind them. And that was how they casted their votes. And so they were saying, I am in support of this person. So they would stand by that person. And that's how votes were taken. And also it is said that each community back in the 1700s, they always had a hatrafi, a medicine man or a medicine woman that was that would counsel these people that were standing up to support them or to guide them and to speak on their behalf. And it is also said that because our government or among our people, among the Dene people, it's a matriarchal society. They would say that the matriarch or the grandmother, the eldest grandmother from each community was also, if there's any issues that came up and these leaders needed additional support or additional ideas or additional thoughts, they would go to these matriarchal elderlies and be able to discuss with them how they should proceed, or they would just get wisdom and good counseling from these individuals. And also back then they had a peace Natsani and a war Natsani, and depending on what was happening in their community, the peace Natsanis would come in and resolve any conflicts that were happening between different groups of people. For instance, if there was a confrontation or there was a disagreement on like what land to be used for harvesting or to be planting crops, and there was conflict happening over that topic, then these leaders would step in, or the peace Natsani would come in and help resolve that conflict. Now, if there was an actual war happening, then you had your war Natsani coming in to step up to that plate of being a leader and guiding their people. So this all happened before we actually had a government system in place. And then so starting in the early 1900s, then we started having more official forms of government. And so today we are going to be discussing what is a chapter house. So right here, you see a picture of Shiprock Chapter House. Some of you that may be your chapter, I don't know. Let's go to the next slide. So here I have what is the most local, a chapter is the most local form of government on the Navajo Nation. The nation is broken into 5 agencies. We'll discuss that for as we move along. Each agency contains chapters. Currently, there are 110 local chapters, each with their own chapter house. Chapters are semi-self-autonomous, meaning that they have their people there to help govern or to help run the chapter, being able to decide most matters which concern their own chapter. Typically, they meet in a chapter house. In Navajo, you say, okay, so that's like a chapter meeting house is where they can also express their opinions to their Navajo Nation Council delegate, although those opinions are non-binding. And as of January 2004, there were a total of 110 such meeting places in existence. So let's move to the next part. Okay, so prior to 1991, there were 88 council delegates representing 110 chapters. And then in 2010, the number of delegates was reduced from 88 to 44 in the 2010 election. And then today in 2022, currently there are 24 delegates who represent the 110 chapters. And so, and as you can see here, we're going from like 88 to down to 44, down to 24. And so that's for each council delegate, they would have to have like 7, 8, 9, 10 different chapters to represent to be able to fulfill the 110 chapters. And that's kind of distributed among the 24 council delegates. So you can see that they are very busy, and depending on where the chapters are at, usually they're all kind of summed together or lump sum together, like very close by. But that doesn't mean that it's still not far for them to travel from one chapter to the next. And as you can imagine, a council delegate's job would be very heavy, considering if they have, let's say, even 10 chapters, or even if they had 7 chapters. If you factor in the time that it takes for them to go to meetings once a month, that would be just 7 meetings in 1 month for the chapters that they represent. And the meetings can run anywhere from 1 hour to 5, 6, hours. And so you can see that it would take a lot of time for them to represent each community, to be able to go and listen to all the different concerns that the community members have, and to be able to address them, and just to communicate effectively with the presidency there to make things happen for the community. So I think that it's a huge job to be a council delegate. And further on in the presentation, I'll introduce you to 2 council delegates, we'll talk about 2 individuals. Okay, so let's go and move on to the next slide. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm going to try and keep an eye on the chat so that I can, if there's any questions, then I can address them. So let's go ahead and move on to the history of chapter houses. Okay. So John G. Hunter, who was a superintendent of Loop Agency, he is generally given credit for the establishment of the chapter system starting in 1922. And this was in an effort to bolster Navajo self-determination and local governance. So what is the purpose of a chapter house? The chapters served as liaisons between the Navajo and the federal government, and also acted as precincts for the elections of tribal council delegates. So as you can see, the purpose of a chapter is very important. It's very critical. And let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so the chapters had no official authority within the structure of the Navajo government. That is until in 1998, the Navajo Tribal Council passed the Local Governance Act, which expanded the role of the existing 110 chapters. The act authorized chapters to make decisions over local matters, as long as they were consistent with existing Navajo law, customs, and traditions. So prior to 1998, they really had no authority. All they had the authority to do was to come, gather together, share ideas or resolve conflicts or bring up issues that they had. And so it was not until recently that there was an act that passed that gave them more power. So what is the purpose of a Navajo chapter? To carry out the federal government's trust responsibilities. So prior to 1982, there was no formal mechanism in place for the proper functioning of the Navajo Nation chapter government. It was more or less up to the individual chapters to deal with the problems and concerns on their own. But as we mentioned prior to this, that in 1998, now it's more, they have more of an involvement. They can contribute to their government system locally. And by doing so locally, then they have an effect on, like at the Navajo Nation level, and then that goes up to like the state and federal levels. Okay, functionality. Okay, the Navajo Nation government system flows up and down through the network of local chapters. 3 chapter officials are elected to 4-year terms, whose function is to convene community chapter meetings and conduct chapter businesses. So they obviously have very important role to listen to the people, to be able to address any concerns that the people may have. And we'll talk more about that as we move along to just the role and responsibilities of these elected officials at the chapter, like the chapter presidency, like the president, vice president, and secretary. Okay, so chapters are broken down into voting districts, from which 24 council delegates are elected to the Navajo Nation Council, which is the lawmaking body of the Navajo Nation government. As I mentioned earlier, the Navajo Nation has their government system is the same as our national form of government, where we have the executive office, the judicial office, as well as the legislative office. And once again, the executive office is where we have our president and vice president. That's, they conduct all necessary businesses that need to happen with our state and local government, because the Navajo Nation is in the state of Utah, in the state of Arizona, in the state of New Mexico, and just more recently in Colorado, land there. Our government, our president and vice president of the Navajo Nation, their job is to carry what they feel is important, what they deem is critical and important to these different forms of government that are above us, because we're a sovereign nation, but we still have to answer to like the national government because of the fundings that we receive from them for our schools and for our communities. We have to be able to work with them. So let's see. So chapters. Okay, so we went through that. Okay, and then once again, the legislative body is for what we're talking about. That's where the chapter house falls under, is the legislative body, because we have our council delegates who are like our representatives. If we compare them to like our senators and House of Representatives at the state level, that's what our council delegates are equivalent to on the Navajo Nation. They are our representatives. And one important thing that I failed to mention is that the Navajo Nation is a unicameral house, meaning it's only one household. Like if you think about each state, there are 2 houses, they're bicameral. So there's the House of Representatives and the House of the Senate. So there are 2 separate houses, and there's like, I think 2 senators for the state of Utah, and I think several representatives for the state of Utah, and they meet every January, as well as I think they have a fall session as well. I think so. Eileen, make sure you correct me if I'm wrong. So, but our council delegates are equivalent to our state representative, our senators, and our House of Representatives. But once again, we only have one house. So, and in that one house, we have the 25 representatives Okay, or I'm sorry, 24, the 24 council delegates. Okay, so what are some services that the chapter houses are responsible for? They serve in these areas, and these are just some areas, not all of them. Health, for instance, social, educational, community development through designated divisions and departments. So those are just some examples. Approximately 40% of the millions of dollars spent each year on Navajo government services is derived from tribal appropriations for services in areas such as healthcare for elderly, childcare, community planning, and water development, as well as capital improvements. And there's many other things. Like I know more recently we've had issues of like missing and endangered, indigenous people, so there's different things that come up depending on what a council delegate feels passionate about. They may say, well, this issue has not been brought to the council delegate, and this is this is what I want to address as a council delegate. Each council delegate will usually have a reason why they are there, and they bring it up to the council chambers, and there's a huge discussion about what their issue is and how they want to resolve it. And so they have those, I know like in the state of Utah, we have what they call a bill. In the Navajo Nation, there is a word for that, and I cannot think of what it's called, but anyway, each representative or each council delegate will come forth and bring a written document and introduce to the council delegate what they would like to see change, and usually everything that they want to see changed and why, all the reasons why they are pushing for that bill or for that that piece of information they will have in this packet, and they will share that with the council delegate, and that's how they are able to make changes and either improve laws or make adjustments to it. And so they have a huge responsibility. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so one thing that I feel like is important to know is how we receive chapter funds. So chapters operate their local government on resources and interests derived from investments the Navajo Nation made on chapter claims trust funds. These funds came from mineral revenue and government claim settlements. They are distributed each year based on current registered voters to all 110 Navajo Nation chapters. These funds are utilized to purchase supplies, hire manpower, fund projects, and other goods and services. And on the Navajo Nation, there's always just tons of projects happening. And we can discuss some of those as we move on as well. So, okay, let's go to the next slide. Actually, let me pause here for just a second. Are there any questions? You are welcome to unmute yourself and ask, or send me a message in chat. Okay, let's go to move on. There are no chats or questions. Okay. Okay, so we talked about various chapter positions earlier. And I wanted to go over each chapter position and how many term limit, like each position, they have to be elected to be in that position. And there are term limits with the position that people are elected to. And so like the first position is chapter president. They have a 4-year term limit. And basically their responsibility is to run meetings. And obviously there's a lot more to that. Not only do they run meetings, they they are able to meet individually with people that may ask them to come and talk to them in person about a private matter, but that needs to be public, or, they have more responsibilities than just running meetings. And then there's the chapter vice president. That's also a 4-year term. And they run meetings when the president is not in attendance. So anytime a president is not able to do what they are elected to do, that's when the vice president will step in and fill in their position. And then the committee vice president, the chapter house vice president, they work with committee members, and we'll discuss committee, the different boards that the chapter houses have underneath them. And so they might be assigned to work with, let's say, the grazing committee. And so their job is to go and attend these meetings that the grazing committee is having, and be able to take that information back to the president, and or even just back to their local area, to the people. They follow up on committee assignments. If there's any assignments that is given out to somebody on the grazing committee to talk to the Lee family about their horses getting out of the corral and going into other people's land or whatever, you know, or onto other people's property, you know, like issues like that may arise, and they're the ones that would go and talk to the families and try and come up with a plan so that there's less disruptions happening, and trying to keep everyone happy. The chapter secretary is also a 4-year term limit, and they their job is to announce chapter meetings like on KTNN or through email, through word of mouth, or by posting posters, or even little handing out pamphlets, putting up these little pamphlets on community bulletin boards, like at the post office, or even at your local trading post or gas station. So they're the ones that are making sure that meetings are announced and that the public is aware of it, so that they can come attend these meetings. And then they also take minutes. If you've ever been to a chapter meeting, minutes are basically where they're taking notes down of everything that is being discussed. And so when they take notes, they write down what topics were discussed. And if there was any voting that was done on that topic, then they're writing down like how many people voted for, against, or abstain on a certain topic. So they're keeping track of everything that is happening at the meetings. They're even recording down who is in attendance, who came. And then if there's somebody that has been excused from the meeting, they will even write down in the minutes who is excused, who all attended, and it has everything on there, who may have offered a prayer, you know, and even like just everything that happens, they record. They also take care of the money, how and where it is spent, by keeping a budget of all incoming and outgoing expenses. And this is very critical. The chapter houses receive a lot of funding each year, and it is up to the chapter secretary to make sure that they are keeping track of every cent. That's to avoid if somebody comes to them and says, you know, you're embezzling money, or you're taking money, or there's fraud happening. If they can keep a balance of where the money is going, and there's proof for that with receipts, then it's easier to back up how the money is being spent in your chapter. So that's a very important position. And then we're down to council delegates. We've kind of been talking about that as we from the beginning of our presentation. Council delegates are very important because they, once again, they oversee anywhere from 5 to 10 chapter houses, and it is an elected position, and they are definitely stretched thin, I would say. And each council delegate will represent their community, or they'll communicate with their community members in different ways. I know that like some council delegates are sending out like Facebook posts. One that I can think of is council delegate Eugenia Charles Newton. She's representing Shiprock area. And I know that she's really good about posting information on Facebook. She'll come out of a meeting and she'll say, okay, this is what we talked about, and these are the things that I agree with, these are the things that I disagree with, and this is where I stand. She's very direct with her position on issues. And that's something that people from her community appreciate. But then other people that are maybe not so supportive of her may be annoyed by that, because, you know, it's, you know, they're thinking, well, you know, she She may or may not have, discussed a certain topic correctly or whatever, but I think for the most part, from what I've seen on Facebook, many of her, the people that she represents from the different chapters are very pleased with what she has done. So, and then some you also use Facebook, but maybe they don't do the live session. They just put it on their Facebook posts and say like what issues were discussed in the council chambers and how they voted on that, or what their takeaway was, or how, where they stand. That all becomes very important to the public, the people that they represent, their constituents. Okay, so let's go to the next. Okay, so on the Navajo Nation, we have 5 various agencies, and I didn't write down everything that each agency represents, but I wanted to give you an idea of the 5 agencies. So I'm going to go through each and every one of them and then tell you what towns are from each agency. So the first one is Chinle Agency. Okay, so you might say, okay, what is a Chinle Agency? What part of the reservation does that cover? Well, it covers Black Mesa, Blue Gap, Tachi, Chinle, Forest Lake, Hard Rock, Lukachikai, Mini Farms, Nazlini, Pinion, Rock Point, Round Rock, Saley / Wheatbills, Tsilane, Cottonwood, and Whippoorwill Springs. So like that's the Chinle Agency. And you may have several several council delegates representing several of those small towns in the Chinle Agency. And then you have the second agency would be like Crown Point, and that's what they call the Eastern Agency. So that covers like Alamo. If you guys know where Alamo is, that's like by Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then it comes all the way out to, let's see, like it covers Rama, which is in New Mexico again by like Gallup, south of Gallup, New Mexico. It covers Crown Point, Bread Springs, Baca, Pruitt, Church Rock, Counselor, Crown Point, Perfueno, White Rock, Little Water. Now that's all the way coming out to almost Utah by Bluff, Utah. It has Manuelito, Nagizi, Ojo Encino, Pinedale, Rama, Standing Rock, Thoreau, Torreon, White Horse Lake. Like that's a huge, huge area that Crown Point Eastern Agency covers. And so once again, you'll have several council delegates that have several of those towns in their that they represent. And then the next one is Fort Defiance. Fort Defiance Agency, they cover Twin Lakes, Cornfields, Coyote Canyon, Crystal, Dilicon, Fort Defiance, Ganado, Hawk, Indian Wells, Jettato, Kinfachit, Klagetoh, Low Mountain, Nashchitty, Red Lake, St. Michael's, Sawmill, Tohatchee, White Cone, White Ruins, and then there's actually more that I didn't put on. So the Fort Defiance Agency covers a huge part as well. And so let's see, let's move on to the next one. Okay, and then there's the Shiprock Agency, okay? The Shiprock Agency covers Aneth, is it Bichito, Cove, Gadi'aha, Mexican Water, Ninahazad, so that's Farmington or Kirtland area, Newcomb, Red Mesa, Red Valley, Rock Point, San Juan, Sheep Springs, Shiprock, Tisnaspas. There's the Burnham, Totalina, Two Gray Hills, Totlacan, Sanasti, Hogback, and Upper Fruitland. And then there's the last agency, the 5th agency is Tuba City, Western Agency. That covers Bird Springs, Bodaway, Gap, Cameron, Chieftain Bitwo, Coal Mine, Canyon, Copper Mine, Benahotso, Kaibitwo, Kianta, Lechi, Loop, Navajo Mountain, Oljeto, Shanto, Talani Lake, Tonalea, and Tonanestize, which is Tuba City. So that's the areas that Tuba City Western Agency covers. And when you're like, if you're from each of these, like one of these small towns, you can probably see how far the distance is from one town to the next, and know that it's a huge area that it's covering. Like some of these council delegates have to cover huge areas. So let's see. And so anytime that you're applying for like the Navajo Nation Scholarship, this is kind of going off topic, I apologize, but they'll ask you which agency you're from. And so when they're asking you about your agency, make sure that you know if you are from either the Chinle Agency, the Crown Point, the Fort Defiance, Shiprock, or Tuba. You're going to be from one of those agencies, okay? And that's as you go on to college, you'll need to know what agency you're a part of when you apply for the Navajo Nation Scholarship. Okay, so let's see. Let me pause here for another minute and see if there are any questions that you might have. You can send it through chat, or you can unmute and ask your questions. What is the Navajo Nation Scholarship? That's a very good question. The Navajo Nation Scholarship is where if you are Navajo, you can apply with the Navajo Nation for a scholarship. And obviously you have to still apply for your Pell Grant, and that's the FAFSA, F-A-F-S-A. You have to apply for that before you apply for any scholarships, including the Navajo Nation Scholarship. But once you apply for FAFSA, then you can apply for scholarships like the Navajo Nation Scholarship. And that scholarship, if you're not sure what it is, if you have a local representative in your school that works with Native Americans, you can ask them and they should be able to share that information with you. And if not, if you don't have a local representative from your school, then you can check in on the Navajo Nation website, and you can go to scholarships and then look for Navajo Nation Scholarship. And I am hoping that they can, oh, okay, Eileen has shared a link with everyone. So if you look in the chat, you can copy that link and go to that website. And I'm assuming you can apply online, Eileen. So, but it's really for anyone who is a quarter blood Navajo. If you can show your certificate of Indian blood. If you do not have a certificate of Indian blood, which they call CID, then you can go to one of these agencies, to your local chapter, and request for them to, or actually, I'm sorry, then you can go to the Navajo Nation office and to the Certificate of Indian Blood division or office, and they can give you an application to fill out. And when you go, make sure you have like your birth certificate, your census number, or actually that's what you're requesting, your parents' name, and if there's a marriage certificate, like you take all that information to the Navajo Nation headquarters, and then they help you get a certificate of Indian blood. And then that number will be requested on the Navajo Nation Scholarship application. So make sure to look in chats to find the online website for the Navajo Nation Scholarship. Okay, thank you for helping me with that, Eileen. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. I wanted to show you, like, for obviously I am in Blandy, and our representative here is Charlene So. And I just found this online, and it shows that when she was running in 2018, I believe, she was running, she represents the Totlacan, Red Mesa, Mexican Water, Aneth, and Tisnaspas area. So those are 5 areas, and most people from Blanding are under the Aneth chapter. And so Charlene, so at 28, she won her seat in 2008 as council delegate for her Navajo tribe, representing a district of 5 chapters that covers northern Arizona and southern Utah. There's the Aneth, Mexican Water, Red Mesa, Tisnaspas, and Totlacan. She became the youngest elected official on the current board, She was also part of a historic vote, joining 2 other women on the 24-member council, which has long been dominated by men. Prior to being elected as a legislator, So worked as a youth ambassador for former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. So she's one that represents my chapter where I am affiliated with. And she is a good representative. And she's one that will document everything that she's doing. Like when she's in her meeting, she'll say, today I attended this standing committee meeting, this meeting, this meeting, this meeting. And oftentimes on Facebook, she'll be posting when she's getting back. And usually it's like super late in the evening. And she gets up quite early because, you know, she has cattle and they need tending too. Like she has, I think, horses and sheep and goats. And so she gets up pretty early to be able to tend to her flocks, to her flocks. And then she's on to her, she puts on her council delegate hat, and then she starts attending meetings, whether it's online or in person in Window Rock, Arizona. She's headed there. So it's amazing all that she accomplishes, and she's quite young, and she has a lot. She's very ambitious and she works hard. And that is 2 things that I've noticed about her. And I'm very thankful that she represents our area, and she continues to work hard, and she continues to keep us all posted on what she is doing. I know that during the winter months, she was personally chopping wood and delivering wood to the elderlies in her area that she knew that had a need for firewood. And so I think it takes a lot of effort to be a council delegate, and she has really taken interest in her community and has gone above and beyond. So I'm quite impressed with her leadership and what she's doing. And so there's another council delegate, and this one is Navajo Nation Council Delegate Amber Kanazba Karate. And I'm sure some of you guys have seen pictures of her, and she may even be your council delegate. She represents Cove, Totalina, Two Gray Hills, Red Valley, Setnaus, Sheep Springs, Bel Clabato, Gadi'aha, Tokoi. Okay, so she has committed much of her time engaged in mutual aid relief efforts during the pandemic within her district and throughout the Navajo Nation. During her work, she made Navajo elders a priority in her work, ensuring that they are taken care of and receive adequate support and were cared for as the coronavirus made its way through the Navajo Nation. And this was just one of many, many areas where she felt passionate about and wanting to make a difference. I know another area, which I mentioned earlier, was just the indigenous people, you know, the missing and murdered indigenous people. That campaign she was also part of. So and she's also a great council delegate, and she works hard. So let's move on to the next. How many of you guys know that she is? Do any of you guys know that she is she your council delegate? As far as you know, like some of you guys might live in these little communities, and she could be your council delegate. Okay, so let's talk about meetings, the chapter meetings. So each chapter determines the number of meetings and the time and place for such meetings each month. So once again, that's the role of the president. The chapter president has the right to call special or emergency meetings. And so they're the ones that are really keeping the ball rolling in their communities. And so they have this responsibility of not only communicating, but running meetings and making sure that the community members' voices are heard, and that this information then gets back to the council delegates. So council delegates are called to make laws and decisions for the country as a government. The Navajo Nation is a representative democracy. In case you're wondering what kind of democracy the Navajo Nation is, we are once again patterned after the national government, federal government, as well as our state government or local government. So the Navajo Nation is a representative democracy. So anytime that there is a chapter meeting, it is important that there is a quorum. So a quorum is required. Tribal council made a rule that all chapter meetings must have at least 25 members in attendance, depending on the chapter. So this is called a quorum, where a certain number of people are required in order for a meeting to begin. So a quorum is necessary for a meeting to be legit. And so, and once again, I believe there is a quota that they have to fill, that they have to have a certain number of meetings each month. Of course, that's all determined by the president based on the information that he or she has on what their responsibilities are. So, okay. So, so here are just some examples of certain committees that chapters that are under the chapter houses. One is the school board. The other one is a land board, grazing committee, co-op boards, 10-day chapter projects. Okay, so the school board, okay, this board can have as many as 7 members, and they are elected to office every 2 or 4 years. Their job is to select quality teachers and provide quality education. Another thing that would be under a chapter is land boards. This committee was started in 1965 by the Office of Navajo Economic Opportunity. They decide how money is spent in each chapter. So land boards are important. And then another committee is the grazing committee. Some responsibilities of this group includes planning for, now back in the day, they used to do sheep dipping, branding, and counting livestock. They check grazing permits, settle any disputes about grazing land, and decide who should farm the land in small irrigation projects. So you will have a committee together that come together and have meetings regarding all these different topics that need to be addressed within the community. And then there's co-op boards. This group is organized when food prices at a trading post are too expensive. The people in the community may come together and run their own store offering lower prices. Well, we'll see people on, on the side of the road selling like different things like squash or watermelon or oranges or whatever. And that kind of is similar to a co-op board. And then you have like the 10-day chapter project. This program allows residents in a community to work and earn money. The tribe receives their funding from oil and gas to pay for these projects. And it could also be from other areas where they receive their projects to do this 10-day chapter projects. When I was younger and I lived in Torreon, New Mexico, I remember my dad would take part in these 10-day chapter projects. Normally he worked for the railroad, but then there are times that when he wasn't going back to the railroad that he would do these 10-day chapter projects. So he would just work for 10 days and then get paid for that time that he put into it. And then to give other people the same opportunity, they make it so that just not one person is taking the entire summer to work for them. They're kind of giving other community members opportunity to earn money as well. So then they kind of like go to the next person and then the next person and so on and so forth. So everyone has the opportunity to take part. Okay, so let's see. So support your local chapter and council delegate. Okay, so I guess this is my challenge to you. And I guess as an assignment, when you turn 18 years old, be sure to register to vote. It is important that you register to vote not only with your state, but also with your chapter. And so when you turn 18, you have that voting privilege. And so it's it's one way that you can give back to your community by registering to vote and really being involved in your communities as far as like the different issues that arise. And one way that you can be involved is through your vote, because your votes do count. The other thing that I wanted to challenge you all is to volunteer on committees. What are you passionate about? What are some things that you can take an active role in to be involved politically? Because there's definitely many opportunities for you to be involved. And it's all about asking and finding out and then finding ways to be involved. And then the other thing I wanted to challenge you to do is to support your local council delegate. Look on the Navajo Nation website and obtain your council delegate's email and get involved. find ways that you can be involved with and on behalf of your people. When I was in college, I actually did an internship at the state of Utah, and that was a really good experience to go to the Utah State Legislature and be an intern for 2 representatives. And I had the opportunity to not only be in the council or to be in the House of Representative chambers when they had their meetings, and each representative discussed the issues that they were bringing to the table and how they needed to vote on it. And it was really neat to be involved. I had the opportunity to write like newsletters that would then be printed in the local newspaper for the county that I was representing. And so it was a really neat experience. I also learned how a bill becomes law, just the process that it takes for a bill to become law. And I know that that process is very similar with the Navajo Nation Council as well, because they have to write out a legislation that of what they are wanting to be addressed, and all the council delegates that are in attendance will be voting on whatever the council delegate brings to the table and shares with their fellow council delegates. And it's different for each representative or each delegate, depending on what the needs of their local communities are. So anyway, so I would encourage each of you to support your local council delegate. Once again, you can go online and find their information. So, and the last part says good luck, but I really should have a place where I make time for questions. So do you have any questions for me? I don't see anything in chat. I don't know if there are any questions. If there's not, that's okay. I will, let's see. If there are no questions, that is the end of my presentation. And so we can go ahead and stop here. But if there are any questions, you are welcome to ask them. Let me quickly share one last thing with you all. Let's see if I can find it. If I can find it. Let's see. Let's see. We'll go here. If you go to the Navajo Nation website, you'll find the Navajo Nation chapters on here, and you'll see the government here as well as like the history. If I go to Navajo Nation chapters, this is what it shows me. So it shows like all the different agencies. And then if you go there also, you'll see that there is an email and a website for each of the chapter houses. So let's just choose one, for instance, and then it'll show what they have at that chapter house. Let's go with, let's go to Klagetoh, NavajoChapters.org. If I go to that chapter house, it shows me, it says Klagetoh, so that's water underneath the ground. And then as you can see, it says chapter meeting schedule. And so they have a planning meeting every second Sunday. They have a regular meeting every fourth Sunday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then they have like teleconference available. So they give their local citizens, step-by-step instructions on how to attend a teleconference meeting. And then they also have their agenda and minutes posted. So if I go to that, you will see that, let's see if I go to recent comment or archives, maybe they don't have anything right now, but they do their best to have information posted on their website. So each chapter house will have a website that you can go to. If you don't know who your chapter officials are, you can go to this Navajo Nation government website, and then it'll show you there like who the president is. Like for instance, for the Klagetoh chapter house, Leland Nez is the president, and then they have Leon Jackson as the vice president, Maureen Woodman as the secretary treasurer, and then there's Raymond Smith Jr., who is the council delegate for Klagetoh, okay? And then they have chapter staff. The community service coordinator is listed, the account maintenance special, the office receptionist, and then they have a Klagetoh land planning committee, and it shows who that planning committee chairman is, and it's Aaron Long. Chanel Tilden is the vice chairwoman, and then Jean Payton is the secretary. And then they have grazing official, there's an Alan Tabaha, and community health representative, who is Lenora Shirley. So you can see that if you go to these, they have a lot of good information. For this one, under forms and links, they have a place where you can get more information for home site lease, housing discretionary, public employment program, hardship, the LIHEAP application, the educational financial assistant, public input request, liability waiver form. And you can see they have a lot of really good information on here. So, so maybe that is my challenge to you, is to, oh, okay, I know what to do for your assignment. Okay, because all teachers give out assignments, right? For your assignment, I want you to go to the Navajo Nation website under government or chapter houses, find out who your chapter president, vice president, and secretary/treasurer are, and send that to your instructor, Clayton Long. And I'll let him know that that is your assignment, is to find out who your chapter president is, vice president, secretary/treasurer, that should be one person. And then actually the final one would be who your council delegate is. So I want you guys to know who those 4 individuals are and send that to your instructor, Clayton Long. Let him know who they are, and that is your assignment for today, okay? So, and I will let him know that that is the assignment that I have given you. And so that's your assignment. So any questions? And once again, if you want to know where that information could be found, in Google, put Navajo Nation. And then if you go to Navajo Nation, click on that, and then go to Navajo Nation chapters. And then you find your chapter and you click on their website, and that's how you find their information. Okay. If there are no questions, then I think that we can officially call this class, we're done. So thank you for attending today. You are welcome.